The space station was cold. It was always cold. Pressed her thin body against the metal wall and tried to stop shaking. She could not stop. Her blue skin had turned pale almost. Her large eyes, usually bright like stars, were now dull and tired. She had not eaten in 2 days. She had not slept in 3. Galactic Trade Hub Epsilon 7 was not a kind place. Thousands of aliens moved through its corridors every day. They came to buy and sell, to make deals and break promises. Nobody came here to help others. Nobody came here to be kind. Her people were small and thin, with soft blue skin and 2 delicate antennae on their heads. Long ago they had their own world. It was a warm place with golden forests and purple seas. But that was before the Dominion came. The Dominion took everything. They burned the forests. They drained the seas. They made the into slaves. Now we're nothing. They cleaned floors. They carried bags. They did the work that nobody else wanted to do. When they got sick, nobody cared. When they died, nobody noticed. That was just how things were. Was 17 years old. She had been working on this station for 2 years, part of a cleaning crew that scrubbed waste pipes and maintenance tunnels. The work was hard and the pay was almost nothing, but at least she had food. At least she had a place to sleep. 3 days ago, everything went wrong. There was a schedule change. Her work group was moved to a different section of the station without warning. Was in the medical bay at the time, getting treatment for a cut on her hand that had become infected. When she came back, her group was gone. Her supervisor was gone. Her bed in the worker dormitory had been given to someone else. She tried to explain to the station authorities. They did not care. Without a work assignment was a criminal. She had 48 hours to find new employment or she would be arrested. Arrested were sold to the mining camps in the outer systems. Nobody survived the mining camps for long. Had spent 2 days looking for work. Nobody would hire her. She had no references, no credits, no connections. She was just another, and there were thousands of on this station, all desperate for the same terrible jobs. Now her time was almost up. Station security would start looking for her soon. She had hidden in the lower levels, in the dark places where cameras did not reach. But she could not hide forever, and even if she could, the cold would kill her first. Needed warmth to survive. Their blood was thin and could not hold heat well. The station kept its temperature low to save power and to please the cold-blooded species that made up most of its population. For it was like standing in snow with no clothes. Every hour made her weaker. She found herself in the main mess hall, a huge room filled with tables and food vendors. The smells of cooking made her stomach hurt with hunger. All around her, aliens of every shape and size were eating and talking. None of them looked at her. A shivering girl was not worth their attention. Knew she should keep moving. Standing still made her more visible, but she was so tired. Her legs did not want to work anymore. She leaned against a pillar and watched the crowd, wondering if this was how she would die. That was when she saw the human. She had heard about humans, everyone had. They were new to the galaxy, only making first contact about 50 years ago. They came from a small blue planet far away in a part of space that nobody had bothered to explore before. At first, the other species had laughed at them. Humans were soft. They had no claws, no scales, no natural weapons. They would be easy to control. They were wrong. Humans were strange. They did not follow the rules that other species understood. They formed bonds with anyone, even members of other species. They kept animals as friends. They cried at sad stories. They laughed at danger. They refused to know their place. And they were warm. Had heard that humans made their own heat. Their bodies burned food like tiny engines, keeping them warm even in cold places. She had never been close enough to a human to know if this was true. The human in the mess hall sat alone at a small table. He was eating something from a bowl, steam rising from it into the cold air. He was not very tall, with black hair and tan skin and eyes that looked tired but kind. He wore simple clothes, work clothes, stained with grease and oil. A worker like her. Watched him for a long time. Her body shook harder. Her vision was starting to blur around the edges. She knew that was a bad sign. It meant she was running out of time. She could ask him for help. The thought came to her like a whisper. Maybe he would say yes. Maybe humans were as kind as the stories said. But probably not. Nobody was kind. Kindness was something from old stories from the time before the Dominion. In the real world, everyone looked out for themselves. If she asked a stranger for help, he would probably laugh at her. Or worse, he would call security and report her as a vagrant. Still, what choice did she have? She could keep hiding until she froze to death. She could let security find her and send her to the mines. Or she could take a chance on a stranger. Pushed herself away from the pillar. Her legs shook so badly that she almost fell. She caught herself on the edge of a table, and the alien sitting there made a sound of disgust and moved away from her. She did not care. She kept walking. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. The human looked up. His eyes met hers. She saw surprise in them and then something else. Concern. He looked at her shaking body, her pale skin, the way she could barely stand, and his forehead creased with worry. Opened her mouth. Her voice came out as a whisper, rough and broken. "Can I sit with you?" For a moment, nothing happened. The noise of the mess hall continued around them. Aliens talked and ate and went about their business. None of them cared about the small blue girl standing in front of the human, waiting for an answer that could save her life or end it. The human put down his spoon. He reached over and pulled out the chair across from him. "Yeah," he said. His voice was warm, like his body, like the steam rising from his food. "Sit down. You look like you're freezing to death." Sat. The chair was hard and cold, but just being off her feet was a relief. Up close, she could feel it now, the heat coming off the human's body. It was like standing near a small fire. She leaned toward it without thinking. The human watched her with those tired, kind eyes. He did not ask questions. He did not demand to know who she was or what she wanted. He just looked at her, and then he raised his hand to signal a passing service drone. "1 bowl of clear broth," he said. "Hot as you can make it, and keep the spices out." The drone beeped and floated away. "I'm," the human said. Tried to answer, but her voice would not work. She was too cold, too tired, too confused. A stranger was helping her. A stranger was buying her food. She did not understand. But for the first time in 3 days, she felt something that might have been hope. The broth arrived in a simple white bowl. Steam rose from it in thick curls, and the smell was clean and simple. Pushed it across the table toward. "Drink it slow," he said. "If you haven't eaten in a while, too much too fast will make you sick." Wrapped her hands around the bowl. The heat was almost painful against her frozen fingers, but she did not let go. She brought the bowl to her lips and took a small sip. The warm liquid flowed down her throat and into her stomach, and she felt it spread through her body like sunlight. She started to cry. She did not mean to. She had not cried in years, not since she was a small child, learning that crying did not help, that nobody came when you cried, that tears were just a waste of water. But now the tears came anyway, rolling down her blue cheeks and dripping onto the table. Did not look away. He did not show disgust or embarrassment. He simply waited, his hands folded on the table, his eyes patient. "Take your time," he said. Drank more broth. The warmth was spreading now, pushing back the terrible cold that had settled into her bones. Her shaking began to slow. Her vision cleared. She could think again. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was still rough, but at least it worked now. Nodded. "What's your name?" He said it carefully, like he was trying to get the sound right. "I'm guessing you're in some kind of trouble." It was not a question, but answered anyway. She told him everything. The schedule change, the lost work group, the 2 days of searching for a job that nobody would give her, the security officers who would arrest her soon, the mining camps where she would be sent to die. Listened without interrupting. His expression did not change much, but his eyes grew darker as she spoke. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's not right," he said finally. "None of that is right." Did not understand what he meant. It was the way things were. It had always been the way things were. We're worthless, and worthless people got treated badly. That was not right or wrong. It was just true. "What do you want?" she asked. Looked confused. "What?" "For the food, for listening." His hands tightened around the bowl. "What do you want in return?" She knew how the galaxy worked. Nothing was free. Every kindness had a price. Maybe he wanted her to work for him. Maybe he wanted something else, something worse. She had heard stories about what some aliens wanted from girls. She had learned to be careful. But just shook his head. "I don't want anything," he said. "You were cold and hungry. I had credits to spare, that's all." Stared at him. She did not believe him. She could not believe him. In 17 years of life, nobody had ever helped her without wanting something back. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "Maybe not," picked up his spoon and stirred his own food, "but it's true anyway." They sat in silence for a while, finished her broth and felt almost normal again. The warmth had spread through her whole body now. She was still tired, still scared, but she was not dying anymore. That was something. Ate his food slowly, his eyes moving around the mess hall. He seemed to be thinking about something. Finally, he put his spoon down and looked at her. "My ship leaves in 4 hours," he said. "The Homeward, it's a cargo hauler. We're heading to a human colony 3 jumps from here." Nodded, not sure why he was telling her this. "The captain is strict, but she's fair," continued. "We're always short on crew for the simple work. Cleaning, inventory, helping in the kitchen. It's not exciting, but it's honest." His heart began to beat faster. Was he offering what she thought he was offering? "I can talk to her," said. "See if she'll take you on. Temporary crew at least until we reach the colony. After that, you'd have options. Human colonies have refugee programs. You could apply for protection." "Why would you do that?" asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You don't know me. Everyone knows we're worthless." Something changed in his eyes. The kindness was still there, but now there was something harder underneath it. Anger, maybe, but not at her. "You're not worthless," he said. "Nobody is worthless. And I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. That's all the reason I need." Did not know what to say. She had never met anyone who thought like this. In her world, power decided everything. The strong took from the weak. The rich used the poor. That was the natural order of things. But was not powerful. He was just a worker on a cargo ship, eating cheap food in a cold mess hall. He had no reason to help her. He had nothing to gain. And yet he was offering to save her life. "Okay," she said. The word came out small and uncertain. Smiled. It was a small smile, tired like the rest of him, but real. "Okay," he repeated. He pulled out a small communication device and pressed a button. "Let me call the captain." Watched him talk to someone named. She could not hear the other side of the conversation, but she saw his face as he spoke. He was serious and respectful, but also confident. He believed in what he was asking for. He believed in her. The conversation lasted several minutes. At one point, looked at and asked her some questions. How old was she? Did she have any medical conditions? Had she ever been convicted of a crime? She answered honestly, her voice steady even though her heart was racing. Finally, put the device away. "Captain says yes," he told her. "You can come aboard as temporary crew, room and food included. No pay until you prove yourself, but that's fair." Tried to speak, but the words got stuck in her throat. She nodded instead. Stood up and offered her his hand. It was a human gesture, she knew. A way of helping someone stand, but also a symbol of trust. She took it. His hand was warm, so warm it almost hurt. His grip was firm but gentle. He pulled her to her feet easily, like she weighed nothing at all. "The docking bay is this way," he said. "Stay close to me. If security asks questions, let me do the talking." They walked through the crowded corridors of the station, stayed close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. Aliens of all kinds passed by them, but none paid attention. Just another human and his companion, nothing unusual. But for everything was unusual. Everything was new. She was walking toward a ship that would take her away from this cold station, away from the security officers who wanted to arrest her, away from the life she had known. She did not know what waited for her on the homeward. She did not know if kindness was real or if it would fade once he got what he wanted. She did not know anything for certain. But she knew one thing. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen something worth saving. And that was enough to keep her walking. The first thing noticed about the homeward was the warmth. She stepped through the airlock and felt it immediately. The air inside the ship was thick and soft, heated to a temperature that made her skin tingle with pleasure. After 3 days in the cold station, it was like stepping into a dream. "Humans run hot," explained as he led her through the corridor. "We keep our ships warm, too warm for some species, but I think you'll like it." Could only nod. She wanted to stand still and let the warmth soak into her body, but was walking, so she followed. The homeward was not a pretty ship. The walls were plain metal, scratched and dented from years of use. The lights were harsh and yellow. The floor was grated steel that made a clanging sound with every step. Everything looked old and tired. But it was clean, and it was warm, and somehow it felt safe. Led her to a small room near the engine section. It had a bed with thick blankets, a tiny desk, a storage locker, and a porthole window that looked out into the blackness of space. "This is yours," said. "It's not much, but it's private. Nobody will bother you here." Stared at the bed. She had never had her own room before. In the worker dormitories, she slept in a bunk with 20 other, stacked 3 high with barely enough space to breathe. The idea of having a door she could close, a space that belonged only to her, was almost too much to understand. "Thank you," she said. The words felt too small for what she was feeling. Nodded. "Get some rest. I'll come get you when it's time for dinner. The captain wants to meet you." He left and was alone. She sat on the bed. The mattress was soft, softer than anything she had ever sat on. The blankets were thick and heavy. She pulled one around her shoulders and felt tears burning in her eyes again. She did not sleep. She was too overwhelmed to sleep. But she sat in the warm darkness of her cabin and let herself breathe. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. 3 hours later, came back and led her to the mess hall. The homeward's mess hall was small, just big enough for a long table and a cooking area. 12 people were gathered there, talking and laughing. They all stopped when entered. She felt their eyes on her and wanted to shrink away. She was used to being looked at with disgust or contempt. But these eyes were different. Curious, yes, but not hostile. Some even seemed friendly. "Everyone this is," said. "She's joining us as temporary crew." A woman at the head of the table stood up. She was older, maybe 50 or 60, with short hair and a face full of lines. But her eyes were sharp and clear, and when she looked there was something warm in them. "I'm the woman," said. "Captain of this ship, welcome aboard." "Thank you," Captain said. Her voice was small but steady. Smiled. "Sit down, eat. You look like you need it." Sat at the table and a plate of food was placed in front of her. It was strange food, human food, but it smelled good and it was hot. She ate carefully, aware that everyone was watching her. The other crew members introduced themselves one by one. There was a young woman with a bright smile who handled communications. There was the cook, a large man with a loud voice and a kind face. There was Minu, an older man who managed cargo. There was a quiet woman who worked in engineering with. They asked questions, but gentle ones. Where was she from? How long had she been on the station? Did she like the food? They did not ask about her work group or why she had been alone. They seemed to understand that some questions were too painful to answer. What surprised most was how they treated each other. They shared food without being asked. When reached for the bread at the same time as Minyu, they both laughed and Minyu let her take it first. When noticed that someone's cup was empty, he filled it without saying anything. They touched each other casually, a hand on the shoulder, a pat on the back, gestures of affection that meant nothing and everything. This was not how crews behaved. In experience, crew members competed with each other. They fought for the best assignments, the biggest portions, the most comfortable sleeping spots. Trust was dangerous. Friendship was a weakness that others would exploit. But these humans seemed genuinely happy to be together. They joked and teased each other like family. After dinner came over too. "I noticed you don't have much with you," she said. "Just the clothes on your back, right?" Nodded embarrassed. Smiled and held out something. It was a jacket, thick and warm, with a soft lining. "This is too small for me," said. "I think it might fit you." Looked at the jacket, then was small for a human, not much bigger than herself. The jacket would probably fit her perfectly. She was lying. She was giving away something she could use just to help a stranger. "I can't take this," said. "Of course you can," pressed the jacket into her hands. "We take care of each other here, that includes you now." Held the jacket against her chest. It was warm from body heat. The kindness of it was almost too much to bear. "Why," she whispered, "why are you all so nice to me?" Tilted her head, looking confused by the question. "Because you need help," she said, "and we can help, isn't that enough?" That night lay in her cabin wearing her new jacket, wrapped in thick blankets, surrounded by warmth. The ship hummed softly as it moved through space, carrying her away from everything she had known. She thought about words, "because you need help, and we can help." It was such a simple idea, such a human idea. In the galaxy knew, nobody helped anyone without expecting something in return. Kindness was a transaction. Generosity was a trap. The strong survived by taking from the weak, and the weak survived by being useful to the strong. But humans did not seem to understand this. They helped because helping was good. They shared because sharing made them happy. They built families not just from blood but from choice. It did not make sense. It went against everything had learned about how the universe worked. But lying there in the warm darkness, feeling safe for the first time she could remember, began to wonder if maybe the universe she knew was the one that had it wrong. She closed her eyes. Outside her porthole window, stars slid past in silent rivers of light. The ship carried her forward into the unknown, into a future she had never imagined possible. For the first time in years, slept without nightmares. 3 weeks passed on the homeward, and began to understand what humans really were. She learned about their history from who loved to talk about her home planet. Earth, the humans called it. A small blue world circling an ordinary star. Nothing special about it, really. Just water and rock and a thin layer of air. But on that tiny world, humans had grown from simple animals into something remarkable. They had not been the strongest creatures on their planet. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. Other predators were faster and more powerful, but humans had something else. They had endurance. They had stubbornness. They had the ability to keep going when everything said they should stop. Long ago told her, humans hunted by chasing their prey for hours and hours. They could not catch an animal in a sprint, but they could follow it until it collapsed from exhaustion. They sweated to stay cool while other animals overheated. They tracked their prey across vast distances, never giving up, never stopping. This persistence was built into their bones. It was part of who they were. Saw it every day on the ship. When a machine broke, would work on it for hours until it was fixed. When a problem seemed impossible, Captain would keep trying different solutions until she found one that worked. When someone was struggling, the crew would help them until the struggle was over. Humans did not give up on anything, on anyone. She also learned that humans were not perfect, told her about human history, about the wars and the cruelty and the terrible things humans had done to each other. They had enslaved their own kind. They had killed millions over differences in skin color or belief. They had nearly destroyed their own planet. But they had also fought to end those wrongs. They had marched in streets and written laws and changed their societies piece by piece. They believed that things could get better, and they worked to make it happen. This was what made humans special, realized. Not their strength or their intelligence, but their belief that the future could be different from the past. One night she sat with in the kitchen while he prepared the next day's meals. He was a large man, almost twice her size, with hands that could crush metal. But those hands moved gently as he chopped vegetables and stirred sauces. "Can I ask you something?" said. Nodded without looking up from his work. "Sure." "Why do you care about me?" He stopped chopping and turned to look at her. His face was serious. "What do you mean?" I'm nobody. I have nothing to offer you, but you make special meals for me. You check if I'm eating enough. You act like I matter." His voice trembled. "Why?" Was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down his knife and sat across from her. "When I was young," he said, "I was poor, really poor. My family had nothing. I went hungry a lot. Some nights I would stand outside restaurants and smell the food I couldn't afford to eat." Nodded, she understood that kind of hunger. "One day an old woman saw me standing there. She didn't know me. She had no reason to help me, but she took me inside and bought me a meal, the best meal I'd ever had." Smiled at the memory. "When I thanked her, she said something I never forgot. She said, 'The universe is cold. We make it warm by taking care of each other.'" He reached across and patted his hand. "That's why I care about you. Because someone cared about me once, and the only way I can repay that kindness is by passing it on." Felt tears in her eyes. She seemed to cry a lot on this ship. "The universe is cold," she repeated softly. "But we don't have to be," said. 2 days later, everything changed. The Homeward was passing through a region of space called the Nebula. It was a shortcut that saved 3 days of travel, but it was also dangerous. Pirates liked to hide in the nebula's dense gas clouds, waiting for ships to pass by. Was in her cabin when the alarm sounded. Red lights flashed and a harsh buzzing filled the air. She heard Captain's voice over the speakers. "All hands to station. We have incoming. This is not a drill." Ran to the mess hall, which was the designated safe area for non-combat crew, and were already there, along with 2 other crew members. Their faces were tight with fear. "Pirates," said. "Raiders. They must have been hiding in the gas cloud." Knew about the... They were large reptilian creatures, covered in scales and armed with natural claws. They were cruel and violent, taking what they wanted and killing anyone who resisted. Cargo ships were their favorite targets. The ship shuddered as something hit it, grabbed the edge of the table to stay on her feet. "They're boarding," said. He was holding a large kitchen knife, his face grim. "They'll come for the cargo first, then sweep the ship for crew." "What happens when they find us?" asked. Nobody answered. They didn't need to. But then something unexpected happened. The door to the mess hall opened and stepped inside. He was carrying a weapon had never seen before, a long metal tube with handles and a glowing power cell. Behind him were 3 other crew members, all armed. "Stay here," said. His voice was calm but hard like steel. "We'll handle this." "There are at least 10 of them," said. "Maybe more." Nodded. "I know. You could die." "I know that too." Looked at. Something in his eyes made her breath catch. "But they're not going to hurt anyone on this ship, not while I'm standing." He left. The other armed crew members followed. Heard the sounds of the fight from the mess hall, shouts and crashes and the high-pitched whine of weapons firing. She heard screams and human battle cries. She pressed her hands over her ears but could not block out the noise. It lasted maybe 10 minutes. It felt like hours. Then silence. The door opened again. Stood there, his clothes torn and splattered with blood. Some of it was his. There was a deep cut on his arm, still bleeding. But he was smiling. "They're gone," he said. "We drove them off." Was moving before she knew what she was doing. She ran to him and grabbed his injured arm, looking at the wound. "You're hurt," she said. "You need medical attention." "It's just a scratch," tried to pull away. "It's not a scratch," his voice was fierce. "Sit down, let me help you." Looked surprised, but he sat, found the medical kit and began cleaning his wound. Her hands were shaking, but her movements were sure. She had treated plenty of injuries in the worker dormitories. "You fought them," she said as she worked. "You could have hidden, you could have surrendered, but you fought." "Of course we did." "Why? They might have taken the cargo and left. Fighting just made things more dangerous." Was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because you were on this ship." His hand stopped moving. "Your crew," said. "Maybe temporary crew, but still crew. That makes you family. And humans don't let anyone hurt their family. Not ever." Finished bandaging his arm in silence. When she was done, she looked up at him. "I've never met anyone like you," she said. Smiled that tired, kind smile she had come to know. "Stick around," he said. "We're not that special, just human." But knew better. In a cold and uncaring galaxy, humans had chosen to be warm. They had chosen to fight for each other, to die for each other, to love each other. That was special, that was everything. The planet was called New, and it was the most beautiful thing had ever seen. She stood at the observation window as the homeward descended through the atmosphere. Below her, green hills rolled toward the horizon like waves on a calm sea. Blue water sparkled under golden sunlight. Cities spread across the land, their buildings rising tall but somehow still connected to the nature around them. "It's pretty, isn't it?" said, standing beside her. "It's incredible," whispered. After 3 weeks in space, after the attack by the raiders, after everything that had happened, they had finally arrived. The human colony world. Safety. The ship landed at a busy spaceport. Crew members began unloading cargo, and the familiar routines of arrival filled the ship with energy. But everything felt different. This was not just another stop. This was an ending and maybe a beginning. Captain found her in the cargo bay, watching the activity with uncertain eyes. "Walk with me," the captain said. They walked through the ship together, past the mess hall where had eaten her first warm meal with the crew, past the engine room where had taught her how to read the ship's basic systems, past her cabin with its soft bed and thick blankets. Led her to the observation deck, a small room at the top of the ship with windows on all sides. From here, could see the spaceport below and the city beyond it and the beautiful green hills stretching into the distance. "I wanted to talk to you before you make any decisions," said. "You have options now, more options than you've probably ever had." Nodded, her throat tight. "You can stay with the ship," continued. "We'll make you permanent crew, train you properly, pay you a real wage. You'd have a home, a family, a purpose." Or asked. "Or you can stay here on New. Human colonies have programs for refugees and displaced persons. You'd get housing, education, help finding work. You'd have rights here, legal protection, a chance to build your own life." Looked out at the city. She tried to imagine herself there, walking those streets, living in one of those buildings. It seemed impossible. 3 weeks ago, she had been freezing to death on a space station, waiting to be arrested and sent to the mines. Now she was being offered a future. "What would you do?" she asked. Smiled. "That's not a fair question. I can't make this choice for you." "Please, I want to know." The captain was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the world below. "When I was young," she said, "I believed that people were basically selfish, that everyone looked out for themselves first, and kindness was just a trick to get something in return. The galaxy taught me that lesson over and over again. She turned to look at. But then I started working with humans. Real humans, not the stereotypes from the stories. And I learned that what I believed wasn't the whole truth. Yes, people can be selfish. Yes, the galaxy can be cruel. But people can also be kind, purely because kindness is good. The galaxy can also be warm if we choose to make it warm. Put a hand on shoulder. I think you've already made your choice. I think you made it the moment pulled out that chair for you. You just need to admit it to yourself. Felt tears burning in her eyes. She had cried more in the past 3 weeks than in the past 3 years. But these were different tears. These were tears of something that might have been joy. I want to stay with the ship, she said. I want to stay with you, all of you. Smiled, a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Good, she said. That's what I was hoping you'd say. They walked back through the ship together. In the mess hall, the entire crew was waiting. Menu, all of them. When entered, they turned to look at her. Well asked, what did you decide? She's staying, announced. Permanent crew, one of us. A cheer went up. Ran forward and hugged so tight she could barely breathe. Laughed his big, loud laugh and promised to make her favorite foods. Even Menu, who rarely showed emotion, smiled and nodded his approval. Was the last to approach. He stood in front of her with that tired, kind smile she had come to know so well. Welcome home, he said. Had never had a home before. She had had places to sleep, places to work, places to hide, but never a home. Now she did. That night there was a celebration in the mess hall. The crew ate and drank and told stories. They laughed at old jokes and teased each other about old mistakes. Someone produced a musical instrument and played songs that did not know but loved anyway. At some point, she found herself standing apart from the group, watching them. These strange, warm, stubborn creatures who had saved her life without asking for anything in return. These humans. Noticed her standing alone and came over. You okay? She asked. I'm perfect, said, and for the first time in her life she meant it. Years later, would tell this story to others. She would tell it to the refugees she rescued from stations and ships, the lost souls she found wandering in the cold parts of the galaxy. She would tell it to her crew, a mixed group of humans and aliens who had all found their way to her somehow. She would tell them about the cold mess hall and the shivering girl who had nothing left to lose. She would tell them about the human who pulled out a chair and changed everything with 3 simple words. Yeah, sit down. And she would tell them what she had learned. The galaxy was cold. The galaxy was cruel. The galaxy did not care about small blue girls with nowhere to go. But humans cared. Humans fought against the cold with their warm bodies and their warmer hearts. Humans built families out of strangers and homes out of ships and hope out of nothing at all. They were not perfect. They made mistakes. They could be cruel too sometimes, but they tried. They always tried, and trying learned was what mattered most. One small act of kindness could ripple outward across the stars. One pulled-out chair could change a life. One human could make the whole cold galaxy feel a little bit warmer. That was the human way, and now it was Sway too. As captain of her own ship, sailing through the darkness between the stars, she carried that warmth with her wherever she went. And every time she found someone cold and hungry and alone, she would pull out a chair and say those 3 simple words. Yeah, sit down. Because that was how you saved the galaxy. One person at a time.